Mr. Begley, members of the board, we do have several items for board discussion this evening. I do want to say to the guests who have joined us this evening, there's no pressure for you to stay. We usually make that announcement after personnel. You are welcome to stay. We are not trying to run you off, but do not feel bad about exiting if you would like to do so. So, yeah, very well.
I've known him since.
All right, so our first item for board discussion this evening is our book study. To refresh everyone's memory, we are covering pages 101 to 176. I don't know that we need a prompt, but if we do, I read, I noticed, I wondered, and I'll turn it over to you.
All right, great. Initial thoughts?
I really kind of latched on to this 5-minute session, this 5-minute room session on page 130. Is not like the first, but it's like where she really explains it. That the insight behind a clever help technique called the 5-minute room rescue, purposed by Marlo Seeley, a home organizing guru who called herself the Fly Woman. Thinking of zooming around your house with wings. Here's what you do. Get to the kitchen timer and set it for 5 minutes. Then go to your worst room in your house, the one you've never let guests see, and set the timer as it ticks down, starting clearing the path. Where the timer buzzes, you drop with a clear conscience. Doesn't sound so bad, does it? As a new mom, this has become kind of like my daily routine. Is I take 5 minutes. Okay, 5 minutes. I'm gonna do the kitchen. Okay, and then I don't think about the kitchen for the rest of the day. I focus on a different room at a different time, 3 hours later, or next time the baby's sleeping. So it's really kind of become like an implement of my life. And I like that they keep referencing it. They reference it again later on, page 135, talking about they use it with the shrinking of the change. That's kind of a way to shrink the change is the 5-minute challenge. It seems so overwhelming, like my whole house is a disaster because I have an infant and I haven't slept in hours. But when I think about small ways to implement good changes, it makes a big impact on your mentality of the situation.
Yeah, can't do anything all at once, so breaking them down into smaller bites. And to that end, he talks about the elephant and the rider all the time. I don't know that he ever referenced it as that's how you eat an elephant, one bite at a time, right? But it's that same mentality of making it manageable, shrinking the problem down. Yeah, great. Who else?
I highlighted that same area and noted celebrate wins because you celebrate the little ones to get you on to the next one. And the previous page, starting out with chapter 6, where it talks about exercise, it's kind of the same way. If you don't feel like doing anything, just do a little bit, and that'll work you on to doing a little bit more and a little longer. And before you know it, you're killing it. You're winning. Mr. Napier, sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead, sir.
You took mine.
He did not.
On page 105, the target lady, it's a short sentence. In other words, when change works, it's because leaders are speaking to the elephant as well as the rider. Don't micromanage, which Billy, no one up here does, so that's a great. Another one on page 144 is when you set small, visible goals and people achieve them, they start to get into their heads, they can succeed. They break the habit of losing and begin to get into the habit of winning. And then on page 168, it's a small one too. To create and sustain change, you've got to act more like a coach and less like a scorekeeper.
Yeah.
To piggyback off of what Clark was saying about exercise, I have a friend who recently came to me and was like, my New Year's resolution is I want to be able to do 1,000 sit-ups. And I was like, good luck with that. Have fun. I'm here to root you on. And they're like, well, I'm just going to start with doing one a day. And I'm just going to increase every day and add another sit-up. And then days I don't feel like it, I'm not going to do it because I'm not going to push myself to pass the point because then I'll give up. But I'm going to keep trying every day and then just adding another push or another sit-up each time. And they're successfully up to like 40 sit-ups. And I'm like, that's more than I can do. Good job.
That goes along with the statement on 136. You can't count on these milestones to occur naturally. to motivate change, you've got to make a plan for them, and that's what your friend's doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say at the end of chapter 6, it talks about the elephant, right? And feeling less scared and less reluctant because things are starting to work, right? We've alluded to that, right? With each step, the elephant starts feeling the change. A journey that started with dread is evolving and slowly toward a feeling of confidence and pride. And at the same time, the change is shrinking and that elephant is growing, right? And just numerous examples, anecdotal stories there that address that. And change is hard, right? So
Absolutely.
it's a great book to give you some tips, some different ways to address change.
Now that-
Certainly within our district or within a office or wherever, whatever scenario it may be. And it talks about in chapter 7, decision-making, right? So you've got, and that's, I thought that was good. You've got to address that, right? How do people make decisions? If they're going to make changes, it's going to be reflective of how they make decisions as well. Anything else? Anyone, Billy, would you like to add anything, or anyone else that's reading the book?
Yeah, just a couple quick things. 106, almost all successful change efforts, the sequence of change is not analyze, think, change, but see, feel, and change. And again, I'm the elephant. That feel word gets me, right? And so I appreciated that. And then the last thing I'll share, just, and many of you have already talked about it. It's a quote from John Wooden on 144. When you improve a little each day, eventually big things occur. Don't look for the quick, big improvement. Seek the small improvement one day at a time. That's the only way it happens, and when it happens, it lasts. And we had conversations earlier this week with our administrative team, and we have been talking and preaching that just, you know, in terms of teaching and learning and post-COVID and closing gaps. Don't try to change. Don't try to go from 3 stars to 5 stars. We have all these buildings. If we all just get a little bit better each year, imagine what that looks like for your building and the district. And that's exactly what has happened over time in the last 3 to 5 years. And it's really beautiful to watch that play out. And then also that's been our messaging, and then to have that here, you know, it just reinforces that works. And I love that last statement. That's the only way it happens, and when it does happen, it lasts. You know, it's not, you know, it's not like that. It's over time, you know, so.
Well, I love that approach, right? Leading isn't sitting up there and saying, everyone needs to be at 5 stars next year.
Right.
That's, where does that take us? Where's the guidance and direction in that?
Right.
Mrs. Ogg, you have marked that book up considerably. Is there something you would like to share?
I think I'm doing this book study with like 3 different groups. So that's why so many Post-its here. You know, this chapter, or this section to me was really important because I connect more with the writer. I'm more of like, organize it, let's get it done, and these are the steps to do it. But in our work, feeling is so important, you know, and people's emotions are so important. And, you know, I think at times as a leader, I would never want anyone to think I'm not compassionate or that I don't care about what we're doing or about them in their role in the process. You know, so this whole section about the elephant has really resonated for me, and as a leader has, you know, given me a chance to reflect on some of the things that I do and the way that I do them to get those results.
So in other words, when Mrs. Ogg says, Billy, let's just do this, let's get this done, and I say, Mandy, can we talk about my feelings? But that really is what makes the world go round, that, you know, we can't all be elephants, and we can't all be riders, and we don't want it to be that way, and, you know, everything works well together, just, that's how it should be.
Yeah.
Yeah. I couldn't resist that, Mandy, so.
Great. Anything else? Okay, we'll move along. Thank you.
Awesome.
All right, our next item for board discussion is in regard to a potential restructure in the Treasurer's Department. This time, I'll turn it over to Mrs. Lee.
So thank you to the board for the opportunity to discuss and make recommendations related to the organization within the Treasurer's Department. While I know you've had previous discussions with Nancy regarding adding an assistant treasurer, the timing was not right to move forward on those decisions previously, but I'd like us to revisit them. In recent years, there's been a rapidly increasing demand for technical expertise and complex decision-making related to fiscal matters, and it's created a large shift in the work that's required in the office. In order to meet those increased demands, we believe that a reorganization is necessary. We are requesting that the board consider eliminating a contractual clerical position, and in place of that position, creating and hiring an assistant treasurer. This will enable Fairfield City Schools to continue to improve the effectiveness and efficiency, as well as the value of the treasurer's office to our stakeholders, and to meet the ever-changing fiscal requirements from the state of Ohio and the federal government. Jason's going to go over some of the research we've been conducting related to the organizational structure and staffing of other area districts' fiscal offices, and then we'll open it up for questions you might have for us.
Thank you, Mrs. Lee. I did, like Mrs. Lee stated, I did a comparison with other Butler County schools with similar enrollment, student enrollment size, also staffing size. And of those schools, each of those schools do have an assistant treasurer position in their treasurer department. I've included both an assistant treasurer and treasurer job description next to you this evening as well. So we can open it up for questions for Mrs. Lee or myself.
I got three. Who hires this person, the board or the administration?
The
That would-
position would report to the
Administration.
treasurer.
Yeah.
Ah,
The position would report to the treasurer, so they would be hired by the administration.
okay, so we wouldn't sit in on the interviews.
No.
Okay, is it possible for Jay to sit in on the interviews? when-
Absolutely, we've already talked about that.
Okay, and
this
is it
gets
possible, if you hire someone before July 1st, they could start with you and Jay as you're mentoring Jay?
I believe that is absolutely the goal.
Okay, I'm good.
Great. Those are good questions.
Yep.
Could you, I mean, you've kind of given us the job description here, but can you kind of explain what an assistant treasurer does with or for the treasurer of the district?
So in my previous experiences, and I think the model we're looking at, assuming that it's approved as part of the reorganization, the assistant treasurer is sort of the right-hand man. They do more of the daily tasks, the routine approvals. They reconcile the bank account. They will fill in for the treasurer when the treasurer is absent, so that you don't always have a treasurer pro tem. You would have the assistant treasurer maybe covering if the treasurer's on vacation. They would do the gap reporting for the audit. They would help gather those things together, free up the treasurer's time from daily tasks to being more strategic and long-term financial planning, participating more with the administrative team on the financial plan of the district. The treasurer would help supervise the staff in the office, trying to think of all the things that are in that job description, reconcile the bank account, approve purchase orders that are of a routine nature, those types of things. Help do the grants administration from a fiscal standpoint, monitor the budget against the CCIP from ODU, do budget transfers, things that are more task-oriented to allow your treasurer to be more strategic.
And just from an outside perspective, I'm not going to claim to know your lane, but just in listening to Amy talk about it, I think it allows the treasurer to have more of a leadership role. And instead of being a taskmaster, leadership role in terms of visioning. And she talked about being strategic and, more of that versus, the treasurer actually completing a long list of tasks on a daily basis. Again, doing them more of that administrative visioning, which is what, leaders are, that's a big part of leadership. So freeing the treasurer up to do some of that as well. I don't know if that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mr. Hustle, you said you compared our district with some others that have this, and if I didn't hear it, I apologize, but the surrounding areas of our size all have an assistant treasurer?
That's correct. Looking at, again, districts here, just for example, in Butler County, Butler Tech, Hamilton City Schools, Lakota, Middletown, all of those schools mentioned, they do have an assistant treasurer in their treasurer department.
Okay.
And I do think too, and I don't even know if he has the list here, I think through his research, I think he also found that even smaller districts, smaller size than us, also had assistant treasurers. And I think Amy was, again, a veteran treasurer.
Are you saying I'm old?
No, I'm not. Veteran. I consider myself a veteran. We're all veterans up here. I think she was surprised, given her experiences, that a district
not.
this size did not have an assistant treasurer.
Yeah. To highlight Ms. Lane, she was incredible, and she probably just absorbed the majority of that herself to our benefit, so it makes sense. It makes sense.
I think that's probably the case.
Yeah.
Indeed, we lost Mrs. Lane to a well-deserved retirement this fall, and we have since hired a new treasurer who will start, in the new school year term. But how can we assist them in that role, which will be new for them, right?
Yep.
And it certainly sounds like this is the right answer.
Yeah, and Mr. Napier, your points about having them, if we can, come in and get mentored by the best and sort of be able to chew
Well,
on
Nancy
that.
retired, so you get the second.
The veteran. But that's a great point, and I hope we can, make that, that perfect scenario work, so, yeah, good.
Smooth transition.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, that's a big job.
So how do you go about advertising for something like this? Is it a civil service? Is it people available?
No, we will, we'll work to get a posting out. We use an online, forum for that, and we will, we'll orchestrate to make sure that, Mr. Phillips and Ms. Lee and myself and Mr. Smith are involved in that process, and we'll work through the process that way.
So if they can start July 1st, would they have a supplemental from July 1st to August 1st, like Amy and Jay?
And
or
they,
just
their
start
contract
July
would begin July 1,
1st? Okay.
2025.
Amy, I think that's a good job for you, though.
Thank you, I am riding back into the retirement sunset, but I
There she
appreciate your
goes.
sentiment. I will be available to help in any way I can.
And we appreciate that.
I'm not just
appreciate that.
going to leave anyone high and dry, but
Yep.
But there's
Jay
more
and I-
cruises to be
there are a
done.
be
lot
taken,
of
yeah.
cruises. I was planning my 60th birthday trip this last week, so.
Good for you.
Jeez, I passed that 6 years ago.
Any other
So is
questions?
this an item we're voting on tonight, or was it
No.
just an open discussion?
Open discussion and,
Discussion.
we've head nod, and I think we have what we need from the board to move forward.
Okay.
Mr. Hustle did provide you with copies of job description, so that will be up for approval probably at the next meeting. So if you have any questions about those job descriptions, please feel free to reach out to Mr. Hustle or Mrs. Lee. Okay. All right, up next, consideration of reemployment of James Pierce. I'll turn it over to Mr. Hustle.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. We'd like the board to consider the reemployment of James Pierce as a bus driver. It's our recommendation to rehire Mr. Pierce due to the fact that we would be rehiring him for a hard-to-fill position. Having Mr. Pierce back on staff will be a huge benefit for our district and the students that we serve here in Fairfield. Mr. Pierce received both, in all categories, either meets or exceeds expectations on his most recent 3 evaluations. Additionally, Mr. Pierce has a long-standing history as an employee in our district dating back to 1996. We currently have 2 open bus driver positions due to employees retiring, and we anticipate Mr. Pierce taking or filling one of those positions. One of those positions will open up as soon as March. We currently also have several drivers off for several weeks due to serious illnesses, which we all know we're encountering that all over the district. If the board will consider Mr. Pierce reemployment, a public hearing will be held at the next board meeting on March 6, 2025. Are any questions I can answer for you before you take action?
No?
That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. All right, our last item, building use regulations and fees. This is something Mr. Perry has been working on, and I think he'd like to give an update to the board this evening, so I'll turn it over to Mr. Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Smith, Mr. Bagley, members of the board. I'd like to take this opportunity to update the board on the process in progress of updating the district's building use procedure. I have collected information from area school districts to compare and update our current rates. And the goal is to be comparable, much like we do with our salaries and benefits during negotiations. In addition, we are adding a few items to the list to provide flexibility with personnel positions as well as additional equipment fees. One of those examples would be the ability to charge for parking. We have been using an online program for building use requests for the past 3 years and will be updating the updated forms and administrative guidelines to reflect that current process, which is working well. In addition, I've been working with Mr. Clemens as well as multiple departments to be sure the updated forms and processes are acceptable for all district departmental needs. In particular, I've been working with the Treasurer's Department, so the updated fees for staff will cover our up-to-date payroll rates. I hope to have something before the board within the next month, and also have something before the executive team within the next 2 weeks to have them look at it as well, so that by the time it gets to you for approval, it's been properly vetted through all leadership. That concludes my update. Are there any questions?
No?
All right.
Thank you.
I apologize for how long this is taking, though. This has turned into quite the beast, so, but thank you.
All right.